Welcome to my course Law and Society in Taiwan. This video presents you with an update to Unit 7 on climate change and sustainable development. We will learn which government agencies have authority and responsibility to combat climate change, and also talk about adaptation and emission reduction measures. Chapter 2 of the Climate Change Response Act specifies the authority and responsibility of government agencies. In this context, Article 8 confers on the National Council for Sustainable Development, the NCSD, within the Executive Yuan, the central authority to coordinate, assign, and integrate basic policies and strategies for cross-sectoral climate change response. This kind of cross-sectoral governance is remarkable because climate change is a cross-cutting matter that requires the cooperation of many different authorities. Look at this picture and you will see various government agencies that must all promote greenhouse gas reduction and climate change adaptation. You see, it's not only the Environmental Protection Agency or the EPA, but also the Ministry of Economics, the Ministry of Transportation, the Ministry of Education, the Council of Agriculture, the Financial Supervisory Commission, and other agencies. In the center, we have the National Council for Sustainable Development, the NCSD, which plays a coordinating and integrating role among all the different agencies. According to Article 9, the Central Competent Authority shall develop and implement a national climate change action guideline. Now you might wonder, who is the Central Competent Authority? According to Article 2 of this law, that is the EPA. However, Article 11 also allocates an important role to central industry competent authorities who shall formulate sectoral action programs for their specific sectors. The latest amendment thereby establishes various sectoral competencies. To give you an idea what sectors exist, think of energy, transportation, or agriculture. These are all different sectors or fields. Apart from the central government, also local government authorities in special municipalities, counties, and cities must formulate reduction implementation programs in accordance with the national action guidelines and the sectoral action programs that I just mentioned. As a result, we distinguish between a national action guideline, various sectoral action programs, and many implementation programs at the local level. So here we now have some questions for you. Which government authorities are responsible to combat climate change? Do you think the Environmental Protection Administration or the EPA alone should be responsible for climate change? Or is it better to involve competent government authorities at all levels, central and local? Give reasons for your answer. Is the government alone responsible for combating climate change, or who else has a duty to contribute? Cite legal provisions to support your answer. Let's now move on to Chapter 3 of the Climate Change Response Act, focusing on climate change adaptation. Here it is important to clarify what adaptation means. We find a legal definition in Article 3, which explains that climate change adaptation means adjusting to climate risks. In other words, it means, hey, we have to do something to prevent the damages or threats caused by climate change. Article 17 makes clear that the government, but also citizens, entities, and organizations shall strengthen their capacity to adapt. Articles 19 and 20 refer to adaptation action programs that shall be integrated into a national adaptation plan, which shall be implemented at the local levels in form of adaptation implementation programs. As a result, we see a similar picture for adaptation measures at the national, sectoral, and local level. What does the term climate change adaptation mean? Who has to adapt to climate change? Finally, let's talk about emission reduction measures listed in Chapter 4 of the Climate Change Response Act. In order to reduce emissions, we first need to know how much is currently being emitted. That's why Article 21 requires certain designated emission sources to conduct emission inventories. So these emissions must be reported, registered, and verified. Article 24 requires newly installed emission sources to offset increased greenhouse gas emissions. This can be achieved by employing low-carbon inventions such as biomass fuel or electric vehicles. Article 25 encourages entities and governments at all levels to take the initiative and propose voluntary emission reduction programs. In return, reduction credits can be earned, which can then be transferred or traded on a platform. According to Article 28, the Central Competent Authority, the Environmental Protection Administration, may impose carbon fees against direct and indirect greenhouse gas emission sources. Certain large-scale emitters of CO2 thus have to pay a fee or price. The money will then flow into a dedicated fund to finance climate change measures. So, it's the polluters who have to pay. That's fair, isn't it? The idea of implementing a cap-and-trade scheme set out in Article 34 is not new, but what is new is that this can now be done in an international context, in alliance with foreign countries and international organizations. This opens the door to global carbon markets, but it also means more competition for domestic markets. Another economic instrument are carbon footprint labels. The term carbon footprint is defined in Article 3 as the total carbon emissions that are released throughout the life cycle of a product, starting with the acquisition of raw materials throughout the manufacturing and distribution process, and also including the usage and final waste treatment of the product. So if consumers choose to buy and consume low-carbon products, this will provide an incentive for companies to practice low-carbon production. And here comes the question for you. For the purpose of reducing emissions, which instrument serves as an incentive or carrot, and which instrument serves as a deterrent or stick? Give one example for each and explain why it serves as an incentive or deterrent. In conclusion, the Climate Change Response Act evidences Taiwan's remarkable efforts to be a responsible player and to contribute its share to combat global warming. What's more, the Environmental Protection Administration, the EPA, has recently been upgraded to a Ministry of Environment with the promulgation of the Organization Act of the Ministry of Environment on the 24th of May 2023. So, we can expect more rules and regulations that will pave the way towards a low-carbon and more sustainable future.